support Julian Assange?
Do I support Julian Assange?
Will you pardon him?
It's a long, I can't say it just yet. It's a long
Please, sir, please.
I'm aware of the issue.
Will you pardon him? Commute a sentence, please. And that was pretty much that. Yeah. This is my thing with Bernie, okay? And I think that Steve hit the nail on the head when he talked about the super secret code that only Bernie's supporters can understand. Why is it that with all of these videos I took of all of these candidates, Bernie Sanders is the only one who is permitted the benefit of the doubt over and over again? Nobody said that about Andrew Yang. Nobody said that about Pete Buttigieg. Nobody said that about Julian Castro. And actually, I want to bring this up because nobody's ever brought this up before. Nobody made that excuse for Bill de Blasio. And Bill de Blasio, despite the fact that he's a corrupt psychopath, he actually did implement quite a few progressive policies as mayor of New York City. He did a lot of terrible things too, but he does have something of a progressive record on which he can fall back. So why didn't anybody make that excuse for him? It's only Bernie Sanders who is seen as the way and the light and the eternal redeemer of our woe-begotten society. It's only because people, like we were talking about earlier, have this rock star view of these candidates where it's a total cult of personality. It's only because of that Bernie Sanders gets this unlimited free pass. If he became president and Assange died on his watch, people would come up with these excuses where he really wanted to do something, but he just couldn't get it past all the bullies in the State Department. Like, I'm just so sick of people constantly acting as Bernie apologists here. Nobody else gets that kind of free pass, nor should they. If you don't support Julian Assange, you don't get my respect and you don't get my vote. Simple as that.
So,
well, you know, I would respond to that I think that you do have support, at least partial support with regard to the Whistleblowers Act. But like I said before, and I don't know if you were here to hear it, Dack, is that the context of the way that the question was received in these three contexts, Yang, Buttigieg, and Sanders, they're all different. So in Yang and Buttigieg, you had their full attention. You're standing in front of them. It's fairly quiet around. You can hear each other. You can see each other's faces, basically, and they're not like moving. You know, they're not being pushed by their staff. While, I don't know, was it Smoke on the Water? Was it like Nazareth playing behind you or whatever? Like full blast, and they're just like, you know, like.
What does that have to do with anything? He heard the question.
Wouldn't
well,
it make
because it's
wouldn't it make for a more daft political decision to say, yes, I support Julian Assange and keep moving and shaking hands? Because the video that Dack released will get less views, but more coverage in people that care about Assange, because the mainstream media is not going to bring it up because they don't want to have the conversation in the first place.
Totally, and it would be great if I could run my car on seawater, but that's not. No one's going to do that. No one's going to stop in a line, you know, where there's like a ton of where you're on your way, where your staff is pushing you around, you know, and they're like, we got to get to the next place, and there's all this noise,
but
and
it's
it's somebody.
Answer. It's a yes or no answer. It shouldn't require him to sit down and explain a full-length thesis on why he does or doesn't support him.
Guys,
yes or no.
Okay, let's do, Dack, before you get in here, let's let Brooke get a chance to finish her full thoughts, and then Dack, you could come in, and everybody, and I'm not trying to boss everybody around, but let's, you know, Brooke is the only one that feels a certain way. Let's let her have the opportunity to fully explain what she means, and then we could have our rebuttals.
Yeah, I just don't think that that any serious political candidate running for president is going to take a question being yelled from the crowd in that context and answer it affirmatively or negatively in a complete sense. And I think that additionally, that saying that he will no longer use the Espionage Act of 1917 to prosecute whistleblowers across the board. I think that that is, I mean, hey, can any of you tell me that any of the other presidential candidates have done that themselves? I mean, what other presidential candidate has any of them said, I will stop using the Espionage Act of 1917?
So
I mean, Tulsi probably has, but
what's the process for that? What's the process of undoing that?
Yeah, that's what I'm curious is what's the process compared to a pardon versus, pulling that?
This is something you can do with an executive action. This is something you can fucking do with a fucking executive action. That's the power of the fucking presidency. All right. And having somebody in the office who actually takes the work of journalists and the work of whistleblowers seriously and thinks that that's part of democracy, which I believe Sanders actually does. I don't think any of these other jackasses do. Maybe Tulsi notwithstanding. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
Years of him not citing Julian Assange when it matters. There's years and years and years of him not even being able to say his name when he repeated Dack's question back to him. Do I support Julian Assange? He starts to say that's a long, and then he thinks better of it because there's in his mind a long walk to that question. It is a very simple question. Do you support Julian Assange? Yes or no? Would you pardon him? Yes or no? And I understand that he's at a campaign event. I understand that it's noisy. I understand that his handlers need him to move along the line and continue glad handing. And I've seen it happen with Bernie, where he'll follow up with a journalist after the fact. Talk to my staff, we'll set up a meeting. If he wanted to answer the question, he's had multiple times, multiple ways to do it. If he wanted to, and I understand, I do, that the media is super mean to him, and I understand that.
Well, so you're aware of Russiagate, right? You're aware that that has changed and poisoned the environment with which we can actually have decent conversations about these types of things, all right? And even having done that, this is what Sanders tweeted out today. Let me be clear. It is a disturbing attack on the First Amendment for the Trump administration to decide who is and who is not a reporter for the purpose of criminal prosecution. All right. Donald Trump must obey the Constitution, which protects the publication of news about our government. And you know, the reason why he can't say Julian Assange is because of all these, flying monkeys with going around with Russiagate, which we have, we've got to push back against that as much as anything else, because that's part of what has poisoned our ability to have a full and an honest conversation about this stuff.
How can we
Dack, why don't you
effectively
respond?
push back against that when the
Dack?
candidate in question is pushing Russiagate and has historically pushed it over support of Julian and support of the fact that Seth Rich was killed releasing this information to him?
Okay, after Brook responds to that, we need to let Dack have an opportunity to also respond. It is his video.
What was the question?
How can we effectively push back against Russiagate as progressives on the left when Bernie Sanders is one of the people that's responsible for proliferating it amongst progressives on the left?
Well, Bernie Sanders had, tell me what Bernie Sanders has done to proliferate it on the left.
He has a speech screaming on the Senate floor about Russian influence in our elections.
Go ahead and share that with me because I'm not familiar with it.
Absolutely. Jimmy did a piece on it, and Rand Paul actually followed it talking about how there was such great Russian hysteria, that it was just the craziest thing to see. So I'll send you Jimmy's video on it.
Okay, well, that's absolutely fine. And, just let the record reflect that, I'm willing to, of all of the presidential candidates out there, I'm willing to give Sanders some leeway on this. And I'm willing to see that he is the one, I think, who would actually change what's going on here, and that he's being put in a box. People are going to call him a socialist, or they're going to call him a Russian lover, or whatever it is. We don't have great options here, and I don't think that the story is fully told just because somebody shouted a question at him as he was moving along a line with a ton of crowd noise around him. That's not in any way the same context as was afforded the other candidates who are, definitely not of the same caliber when it comes to civil liberties.
Okay, Brooke, thank you. I do need to let Dack have a chance to also respond to the assertions that were just made. Dack, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so let's address your points one by one. You say that it's no candidate is going to is going to give an answer in the affirmative or the negative. Well, that's demonstrably false, because I have about 12 different videos of myself asking these candidates the questions in situations similar to the one in which Mr. Sanders found himself. And we did get definitive negative responses from Amy Klobuchar. We got the laughing from Julian Castro. So that's not true. Your next point is about Russiagate.
Can I just answer that really quick? Because it's a lot more difficult. It is really easy to laugh someone off. It's really easy to go, no, fuck you. It's totally easy to do that.
That's not what you said.
No, it's totally easy to do that.
Guys, nobody can understand what you're saying. Dack, I'll let you finish. Brooke, please let him finish, and then you will have an opportunity to
Let me just say this one thing, because what Dack is saying is that there is an equivalency of, someone running through a line and saying, and the question is, do you support Julian Assange or do you not? It is totally easy to score points and to feel really good if you're a shit candidate to say, hell no, I don't, or laugh at it, or shoot fucking birds about it. That's totally easy. What's hard is to stop and say something in the affirmative and take the time to talk about it, because no candidate can stop and answer that in the affirmative unless they unpack it, because they are going to get massacred in the media, and they know it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dack, you'll have a chance to respond. Brooke, let him finish, and then you could follow up as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, you just moved the goalpost right there, because you were the one who said that it's impossible to do it in the affirmative or the negative. Now you're switching it up on me, so I'll accept your acknowledgement that that was a bad point to try to make. But here's the next thing is you asked when he mentioned Russiagate. I can say that at the rally where I asked him that question, or shouted the question, as you put it, which was not true. He did mention Russiagate. He was complaining about Donald Trump not taking international interference in the election seriously, which is why I realized, okay, he's probably going to have a negative answer about Julian Assange. Now, when I asked him the question, I did not shout it at him. I don't know why people are constantly focused on my demeanor or my decorum when I asked him the question, or you, as you mentioned the noise. He clearly heard the question quite well, hence why he responded to it. And as Christy had accurately noted earlier, this is not a question that requires a nuanced, convoluted answer. It is a simple yes or no. It's not like a question about a healthcare proposal where, well, this proposal might involve this kind of tax differential as opposed to this one, so it requires some kind of complex, multi-layered analysis. It is a simple, are you going to support him or not? And he says, I can't say, and points at the camera. That indicates to me that he was too afraid to answer the question because he knows that this is an issue on which he will be nailed in the same way that Tulsi Gabbard is nailed for bringing it up. It's a taboo. So if he is too much of a coward to bring it up on the campaign trail, and if he's willing to basically kiss the ass of the intelligence agencies all the way to the White House, how do you think those intelligence agencies are going to feel when once in office he does a complete 180 and says, oh yeah, I've been lying to you guys for the past 14 months. I'm now going to do what I want and free Assange. Ha ha ha. Something tells me that he would have been a lot better off just declaring his opposition to the NSA from the very beginning. Would he not have been?
Well, is it okay for me to talk now?
Yes, and I'm just making sure that everybody can hear what you're saying, and it can be heard clearly, of course, so things aren't misconstrued, and then also that everybody has an appropriate amount of time. So now, Brooke, you could talk, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so, it's not about your demeanor, Dack. There's nothing about your demeanor that I would particularly call out. It's the context of where you are at and what is surrounding you. There's a volume situation. There's a situation with the candidate being pushed around. Now, whether or not he's going to. What is the second thing that you were saying about like flip-flopping with the intelligence agencies?
Yeah, if people say that he's just playing possum, basically, that of course he's going to defy the NSA, but only once he gets into office.
Well, he needs to answer the question. He needs to sit down and have this conversation. I didn't say that was an adequate a response. I just don't think that was an equivalent asking of the question. It's not equivalent to the way the question was asked to Yang. It's not equivalent to the way the question was asked to Buttigieg. These are totally different situations. You were in a question and answer session with an audience with Buttigieg versus all kinds of, here's a candidate being pushed through a crowd and it's a miracle that he saw you, first of all. It's a miracle, to one guy with a camera going, hey, let me ask you a question. He's got people all around him who are paid to make sure that he doesn't take questions from people like you in that situation. I would not let a candidate stop and have this conversation with somebody who I don't know in that kind of context. I would not do that. I would not allow that. And nobody who has experience in working with candidates and working with crowds would allow that to happen. Now, I think that you actually got a fairly decent answer from him, which is that there is a lot more that needs to be said about this. And he followed up with, and who else has done this? And he followed up with, I will not use the Whistleblower Act or the Espionage Act to prosecute whistleblowers. Do you know anyone else who said that?
Okay, so I think that what we're having right here is that there's a disagreement on procedure and journalism practice, and also the interpretation of the answer to the question. Dack, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, well, here's the thing. First of all, this is where I get really sick of people who try to act like they know what I've done better than I do, because they were not there. First of all, you said that it was a miracle he could see me. I was literally 5 inches away from him. There was a cordoning rope between him and the candidates. That was all, between him and the audience. That was all that separated us. So you can't see that from the angle of the video, but I assure you, he was about as close to me as I am to my laptop right now. So no, it's not a miracle that he could see me. Secondly, you brought up the framing of the question, how Buttigieg was taking questions from the audience and how Andrew Yang was taking questions from the audience. Another point where you're wrong, because you were not there.
You just misstated that. You just misstated that. It was Buttigieg who was in a question and answer situation, and you were talking to Yang on like on a concourse.
Okay, Dack, let him finish, Brooke, and then we'll let you respond again.
You, this is again, you moving the goalposts. You said that it was Andrew Yang and Buttigieg were both taking questions from the audience. That is not true. Yang was just moving through a crowd quite in the same exact way that Bernie Sanders was, and I just stopped. Again, we took a selfie, and then I said, "Oh, hey, do you support Julian Assange?" And then he answered the question. He stopped to answer my question amidst the crowd of everybody else. So if Andrew Yang can do it, I don't know why Bernie Sanders can't do it. But again, this is the magical, ever-changing metric that Bernie Sanders is privileged with for reasons totally beyond my comprehension. Now, you said that he's has people who around him who are ensuring that he does not answer questions from people he does not know. Well, why exactly is he hiring people who do that sort of thing to ensure that he does not answer questions? I mean, this again speaks to how entrenched he is with the establishment.
Oh my
Clearly,
God.
you have this favoritism towards Bernie Sanders. He's your preferred rock star in a way, but that doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge his flaws. He flunked on that basic yes or no question. That is indisputable. And at this point, I cannot. The apologists for Bernie Sanders really have just got to face the facts and recognize that the man, while he does have a decent record on certain issues such as civil rights, when it comes to things like taking down the military and industrial complex, he's not really much less shameful of a prostitute than most of the other people running for president.
Okay, guys. Okay, before Brooke, you respond, and then Dack, I'll let you have the last word because it is your video. Let's just not personally attack each other. I think this debate, this healthy debate, is great, and I think we should have these discussions. But let's make sure that we don't, go after people personally or, start to get into the name calling. I wasn't suggesting anything, but Brooke, why don't you respond? Dack, I'll give you the last word, and then we do need to move on, guys. We do need to talk about Max Blumenthal. That's another very vital and important issue that we do need to touch on this evening.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I think what Dack just said kind of speaks for itself. People of good faith can disagree. And, I've worked professionally with campaigns for quite some time. I know what I'm talking about. I don't think there's nothing else I'd respond to that. I mean, you just got to back away at a certain point and be like, all right, dude, it's all right.
Yeah, I think there's just a really big difference in journalism practice here in a perception of what exactly took place. So Dack, why don't you have the last word here? Like I said, it is your, I want you to have the opportunity to, rebut, and then we will be moving on because we do need to get to Max. So quickly, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that with people who are, people always ask me, what exactly did Julian Assange do for me? Or people who want to criticize what he did. What I always say to those people is Julian Assange did what he did, even for people who don't appreciate it. So when I go up to these candidates and ask them the question, I don't do it to get personal respect or appreciation from people who don't have respect for what I do. I do it to provide the information for people who are actually going to use it. So that's all I'm going to say is that I'm okay with being disrespected by the people that I'm trying to help here. I'm just saying I provide the information to help Julian Assange, not to help my own image.